Welcome, fight fans, TheTitleFight.com. Got my boy Brandon Stubbs here on the line with me, and we're going to cover a couple hot topics that have been filtering through this last week, even though it's been a little slow week in boxing stateside here. But nonetheless, the boxing world's still in a buzz right now, in somewhat of a frenzy here, as Mayweather once again utilizes his notoriety to stir up a lot of activity with who his next opponent's going to be. Who's in line for the Mayweather Sweepstakes? So we got a couple of the guys that are front runners for it. Today it was just announced that Amir Khan has kind of moved along ahead of the polls and ahead of the rankings from Maidana. But who knows what's going to come up here in the upcoming week there. Before we jump too much into the politics of that piece there, Brandon, I want to kind of just get your initial take on this whole matchup here, Maidana or Khan. I mean, who would you rather see in the mix here if it was going to be up to one of these two guys?
It's almost like the lesser of two evils. Neither guys really would wow me. I think Maidana has a little bit more power than Khan, but then Khan has the hand speed that you'd be kind of interested to see how Mayweather would deal with someone who has, decent hand speed compared to him. So it's kind of a 50-50. If I had to pick one or the other, I'd say Khan. I think Khan just because I think if Khan were to lose, we'd probably be done seeing him on a large stage for quite some time.
Okay.
If he was to get Maidana, it would be more of him handling little brother's work with Adrian Broner, who's in Maidana here last year. So I think if Khan were to fight him and Khan were to lose, we'd be done with looking at Khan for quite some time. I think if it was Maidana and Mayweather would win, but we would still see Maidana down the road, and even again in another big fight as time wore on.
Yeah, I could kind of see that the case as well. Just kind of how things are shifting, it almost appears that, maybe this is just all hype anyways and just another reason to build buzz around Mayweather's upcoming fight, which is usually the case. But a lot of talk, and Broner's been very vocal about it, that he wanted to just jump right back into it, no soft touches, wanted to just get back into the mix against Maidana. Should we happen to see that clash take place, if Amir lands this big payday here, is Broner. Do you think that things are going to be different this go around here, or do you think that if Maidana, cashes in and catches him once again here and just thumps him, that, we're going to be done seeing Adrian Broner as well? Get rid of two guys here.
Well, I think in Broner's situation, I think he's going to learn from that mistake that he made and maybe taking Maidana too lightly in that first encounter. So I think you're going to see him fight a different style. With that being stated, though, will that style be enough to overcome his defaults and his downfalls in facing Maidana? I think it'll be an interesting rematch. I do think Broner would win. But quite honestly, I think we would see a third encounter between the two, either way it goes. But I do like Broner actually winning the rematch and going out and actually boxing and not trying to be in a brawl along with Maidana.
Sure. Yeah, and going back to the initial question there, I mean, if Marcos was to land this particular shot there, I mean, is it feasible to throw him in the mix there off of, especially what happened at the end of last year in that upset against Broner? Does Marcos make sense? Does it make sense to throw him in the mix there from a money standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, or Amir being the person that he is, the great marketer himself here, although at the same time, I mean, I've heard opposite of that from fans out in the UK and people that have actually contributed to our side as well, that that's more of a hype job as well, that Amir really isn't the big popular star that he paints himself to be over there. From that standpoint, what makes more sense?
I think from a business aspect, Khan makes more sense. I think he has a larger fan base than what Maidana does. Now, granted, that's not saying either man has a huge fan base compared to opponents Floyd has fought in the past, but I don't think Marco Guerrero had a huge fan base. People still went out and watched that fight. People still ordered it on pay-per-view. So I think Khan brings a larger crowd, brings a whole other country involved in the bout. So, I mean, it's not going to be anything from Mayweather does from here on out. It's not going to top the numbers he did here with Canelo in May. But I think he can come close to doing really good numbers with a solid opponent like Amir Khan. I think he just brings a larger fan base that would actually help him out compared to what Maidana does.
And kind of leading into that as well, Brandon, you got the opportunity to create a piece for us here that touched base on a perspective here of Mayweather's opponents that we haven't been able to really talk a whole lot about in the past, and that's the aftermath of stepping in the ring against the Mayweather. Now, you already said that, hey, if Khan gets that shot, more than likely, hey, maybe we'll just not have to see him anymore. Maybe that's Khan's plan as his last outing, and he's going to go out with a bang and a nice retirement check. Who knows? But nonetheless, we have noticed a trend following previous Mayweather opponents, and you wrote a piece entitled The Mayweather Curse, Fact or Fiction. Drop a little bit of knowledge for everybody listening on that, Brandon, kind of what that entails, and if this is going to, you think, in your opinion, going to follow Canelo leading into his bout with Angulo.
You know, it can. It really can. I think the one thing compared to some of the opponents during the pay-per-view reign of Mayweather, and that's really stemming from June of 2005 to today's date. Now, he did have one fight in between there was on HBO, and I want to say that was against, I've forgotten who it was, but it was an off opponent, and then everything after that's all been pay-per-view. Mm-hmm. The one advantage Canelo has compared to some of the other opponents on this list, he's extremely young. He's still young in the sport at his age, and granted he's fought a lot of fights, but it's been against a lot of lower competition in Mexico. But, you know, if you look at some of the names he made with fought and then how they performed in years afterwards, Arturo Gatti, he only fought 3 fights after the Mayweather fight, and he only went 1-2. And he retired after the 6th round when he fought Mayweather. You look at a guy like Carlos Bonmir. He lost unanimous decision to Vernon Forrest. He ended up going 6-5 down the road in his career, including a loss to Canelo, oddly enough, in 2010. But you had guys who actually have done well. Juan Manuel Marquez, he won 3 straight after his fight with Floyd Mayweather, which was a one-sided shutout. He's won 5-2. You can kind of say he could be 7-0. Those fights were against Manny Pacquiao and Tim Bradley. Right. Depends on who you ask. Those 2 losses, he goes here or there. But then you have guys who just really went to crap. I mean, it's probably the best way of explaining it. A guy like Victor Ortiz, who just seems like his heart and mind is not in it. We kind of saw that in the fight when he had against Floyd Mayweather there, how he got knocked out. His heart and mind just was not there. Right. You got the guy like Robert Guerrero right now, who's currently on the shelf, trying to get out of this promotional contract and saying he only wants big fights and only wants to fight certain fighters. But those opportunities aren't going to open up for him. So You got to wonder with a guy like Canelo Alvarez. He's young. I think Golden Boy looks at him as being their future, their golden ticket. I think they're going to promote him and maneuver him in the correct direction to where he won't fall victim to the Mayweather curse.
Yeah, one would believe so. I mean, this is either way. I mean, I think the way Canelo fights and stylistically, he can get away with having a completely trade with a guy that's straight coming forward all the time like Angulo. However, what kind of interests me is the way that Angulo was in the ring against Erislandy Lara, who's considered, one of the most supreme boxers out in the game right now, and he took it to him. Do you see Canelo facing similar challenges in the ring against Angulo, him being the straight come forward fighter, just relentless, nonstop? I mean, like you said, the guy can take 1,000,000+ punches before he's going to call it quits. Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, this is one of those things that can work to the advantage of Canelo, it can work to the disadvantage. The advantage is, again, he's going to have somebody in front of him who's going to be there and able to be hit all night. Problem is, he will hit back. And, to this point in his career, we can honestly, say that has Canelo's chin really been tested? He's fought guys who are lighter punchers per se. They're at 154, so you wonder, how good his chin is. I think Angulo's really going to put that to the test. But I think Canelo is smart enough and can win that fight. But again, this is a very extremely intriguing matchup, and I think it's well put together there by Golden Boy because again, it's going to be an action fight. I don't see any way it's going to be boring because you got a guy who's going to stand there and take hits, but is also going to dish them out as well. Yeah, not to mention that undercard. Thank you, Golden Boy, for putting together a nice undercard that's, at least not going to make the public feel like they're being ripped off on the cost of a ticket there, or the cost of a pay-per-view. About a pretty solid stacked card there. Once again, Mayweather's still in the spotlight, and to his advantage, of course, that's something that him and his team are more than likely really grateful for. But he's even been coming out of the mouths recently of rival promoter, businessman on the opposite side of the ranks there in Bob Arum. Most recently, it's been announced that Manny Pacquiao and Tim Bradley are going to be getting it on again, once again here, April 12th. And although a lot of buzz have been circulating about that particular bout and, who's at one particular mindset, Bradley's obviously switched it up, and he showed some really big improvements over the last year. And Pacquiao, coming off of a hard knock defeat against Marquez and then bouncing back against Rios, which was somewhat questionable in and of itself as well. But there again, we got Bob continually trying to sell the wolf ticket that the Mayweather clash would be there, but Mayweather's still not willing to face Manny because of, A to Z amount of reasons there. Brennan, do you think this is a good idea by Bob? I mean, he keeps on this. He's an old man. He keeps on throwing stuff out there, trying to fish for a fight like this that, more likely will never happen, and still in the spotlight away from one of his other own roster, and Tim Bradley and Manny Pacquiao. Might not affect Manny so much, but Bradley already has a hard enough time as it is getting people to want to buy into his fights and watch him fight. How is this going to impact this fight?
In the long run, it won't impact it too much because it's still early enough in the promotion. But again, it's one of those things to where Bob just needs to just leave well enough alone. That's something we know is not going to happen. The fight, Mayweather has made it clear he doesn't want to do business with Bob Arum. He doesn't plan on ever doing business with him. So just let it ride. Just leave it where it's at. Focus on your fighters and focus on the promotion of your fighters. You can't worry about someone who's not signed to you, someone who's not going to work with you. Focus on your fighters, help build the buzz for them, and not give Mayweather free promotion. Right now, Mayweather's not even fighting. He's not doing really any interviews, but he's getting free promotion thanks to Bob Arum. So Bob's doing his guys a discredit and not building and buzzing about their fight instead of building the buzz about a guy who's not fighting on that card, on that day, on that network, and he's giving it to him absolutely free. So I don't know if it's just Bob being old and confused or what, but it's one of those things he can just let it go. Let's focus on this fight because it's going to be a hell of a fight, I think, and I think it's going to do a lot for both. It's going to be a kind of a turning point for someone's career. It's either Manny Pacquiao stays relevant or Tim Bradley becomes a megastar in boxing.
Well said. You heard that from my man himself there, Bob. Let it go. Let it go. And last but not least here, we're about 2 months early on this here, Brandon, but I want to get your early picks on this. Pacquiao-Bradley, what are we going to see in this fight? What do you think is going to take place? How is it going to play out?
I think Bradley knows what Pacquiao is going to do, and I think that's going to be to his advantage. And I think Bradley also knows, and he's even stated it here this past week during the press tour, that if it's a close fight, if it's close rounds, the rounds are going to go to Pacquiao just because of what happened in the previous bout. So with that being stated, I look for Tim Bradley to fight a very smart, efficient fight, but I also look for him to go for the knockout. And we're going to kind of wonder, and we're going to see, how much has made him truly recover from that knockout of Juan Manuel Marquez. Brandon Rios was not the right opponent to really test that. We thought he was. We saw that fight. I don't see Tim Bradley, going that route and looking that pathetic against Manny Pacquiao. I look for Tim Bradley to be extremely aggressive, but smart, and he's going to wait for his opening to come, and it will. And I honestly think Tim Bradley's going to win this fight, and I think he's going to actually win it, be in a unanimous decision, but he's going to score a couple of knockdowns during the fight.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting there because he obviously doesn't maybe hit harder than Rios, but we never got to see that tested because Rios was just a punching bag pretty much the whole night. So it'll be interesting to see how the chess match plays out there. Good stuff. Well, we want to keep it short and sweet this week, folks, but thanks for tuning in. And once again, I want to give a shout-out, a couple of people that are really helping us out and getting the word out about what's taking place over here at TheTitleFight.com. UltimateSportsTalk.com. You can find information on what we're doing on their website as well and their feeds, as well as other relevant sports. My man Brandon, on a weekly basis, part of the BadCulture.net radio network. He's launching PunchToTheFace.com every week for insight and news on MMA. And this is the man to catch here over there, based out of Kansas City. He's got some hot stuff coming up. Brandon, you want to drop a little plug there on what you got coming up this week? You got another guest coming on board this week, right?
Absolutely. I have Invicta FC President Shannon Knapp. Women's MMA is huge, and she's going to talk about her organization, what they got coming up, and just the evolution of women's MMA and how she's a part of that. So that's a big show here this Wednesday.
Got it. Heard it right there, my man. He's making some moves happen. Be a part of that right there. Once again, thanks for tuning in. Signing off until next time.